Some years ago, I came across the idea of 1875 being an important year for the occult, and I later came to understand. I didn't know at the time why that year was so significant, but it piqued my interest. And I later came to understand that it was a great deal to do with the founding of the Theosophical Society, Helena Blavatsky, and that whole story. So when I came across this chapter, I was really thrilled to tie up some loose ends, because I knew there was more to it than just the founding of the Theosophical Society. So if you have an interest in occult history, as I do, you'll probably find this interesting, but it's certainly probably not for everyone. So, I'm sorry about the lighting, it's a bit glary, isn't it? This is the book that I am currently reading, and I thought I'd just share the chapter that deals with 1875. It's an amazing book, and again, if you're interested in occult history, it's a must read. Paul Weston, The Occult Battle of Britain, and I haven't finished reading it yet, and I'm pretty sure I'll be raving about it in another video, because it's absolutely marvellous. He's such an erudite researcher, speaker and writer, and his work, I think, is so important. He's a resident of Glastonbury and a great champion of the Avalonians. So I am going to just simply read from his chapter. And I don't think you'll be able to follow along because the text is so small, but there we are. The great year of 1875 and an unveiling. Strange changes befell HPB being Helena Blavatsky, in 1875. She experienced the powerful reality of a double, another being, at times very near to her and often as if living in her body, that gave her access to all manner of apparent memories and knowledge, otherwise unknown to her. This was her teacher, the Master Moriah, often shortened to just M in theosophical literature, and he became visible to her and eventually to others. Her, in inverted commas, higher and luminous self was also activated by this process. Much was stirring in the airwaves that year as HPB was prepared to become the vehicle for the coming Theosophical Society. So a young man who would later encounter her ideas and shape them into something that would help great evil to manifest in the world was having some powerful experiences of his own. Guido von List had been born in Vienna in 1848, By the age of 14 in 1862, he was already revealing an unusual temperament. St. Stephen's Cathedral is the most important religious building in Vienna, a huge edifice full of history. Its 445-foot tall tower had served as a command position during the siege of the city by the Ottoman Turks. Mozart's marriage and funeral had happened there. It was something other than that feast of history and culture that would impact on the young Guido. On a visit there with his family, they'd made a point of visiting the labyrinthine catacombs where there were piles of bones and skulls. He felt a strange urge to kneel before a ruined altar and pledge to the temple to Wotan when he reached adulthood. A number of the party laughed and mocked him, but Liszt would later consider it to have been one of the most important events of his life. By 1875, he was a solitary wanderer in wild landscapes, but also secretary to the Austrian Alpine Association and leading member of a Viennese rowing club. On June the 24th, he went with a party of his athletic friends along the Danube to the ruins of a Roman town in Carnuntum. Marcus Aurelius had written some of his meditations there. Bottles of wine were consumed, and whilst the night served as a convivial gathering, for Liszt there was a deeper purpose, as he believed they had gathered on the 1500th anniversary of a victory by Germanic tribes over the Romans. He considered their fire to be a more solemn indicator of the time of year and marked the occasion by burying the empty wine bottles in the shape of a swastika under what was known as the Pagan Gate. Liszt would later write a novel on the historical period that so enthralled him. It was published in 1888. If we can believe his later account, something extraordinary had happened to him there. He saw the town and the great battle with exceptional vividness. He believed that a sequence of events began with the Battle of 375 AD that led to the sack of Rome in 410 and the effective end of the empire. Austrian-based tribes had led the assault on Rome. The power of the Catholic Church was a continuation of Roman occupation. German culture was high culture. In the summer of 1875, Helena Blavatsky wrote a piece by order without even knowing what it was intended to be. A newspaper article, perhaps. It was in fact the start of what would become one of her two epic works. By September, she was spending hours writing at about the rate of 25 pages a day. The process of her writing has generated considerable contention. HPB was not obviously referring to any books. She was staying at the home of a Cornell University professor who did not possess an occult library. His collection was primarily English literature. The professor gave an account of the procedure. Blavatsky would start sitting in bed at about 9 in the morning and write while smoking lots of cigarettes. She was somehow quoting verbatim from obscure books that would have been hard to obtain anywhere in America. She seemed to be translating from many languages. Her own explanation was that she was seeing texts with her inner eye and writing down what she needed from them. Later work on what became Isis Unveiled did see her using books belonging to Olcott, that's Henry Olcott, one of her associates, but still also reading from what she termed the astral light and being directed by her teachers. In the end, she was working for 17 hours a day on what became a 1,000-page plus text. Later critics found enormous numbers of unacknowledged passages from many sources quoted verbatim and suggested a more prosaic, plagiaristic interpretation. In August 1875, Master M brings orders from a society, a secret society like the Rosicrucian Lodge, and he promises to help. This was the message that she received. The terminology, despite apparently coming from an Eastern adept, is clearly suggestive of the kind of Masonic material HPB had encountered in her great-grandfather's library and the connections she had been building ever since. On September the 7th, HPB and Olcott set up a lecture on the lost canon of proportion of the Egyptians, Greeks and Romans, given by George Felt. There was a lively discussion afterwards, and Olcott wrote a note inquiring, would it not be a good thing to form a society for this kind of study? It was passed to HPB, who nodded approval. It was, after all, an idea that it seems she was already intending to pursue. One assumes that her earlier orders from Moria, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, had not been discussed with Olcott. Once again, the immediate stimulus could be considered to be primarily the Western mystery tradition. Names were suggested for the group. The final outcome was not the first choice or Blavatsky's. Theosophy breaks down as theos, meaning God, and Sophia, meaning wisdom. The new society's basic principles were stated as, number 1, to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or colour. 2. The study of ancient and modern religions, philosophies, and sciences, and the demonstration of the importance of such study. 3. To investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the psychical bars latent in man. The inaugural address of the Theosophical Society was eventually given on November the 17th, 1875. The year is now considered to be exceptionally important in the history of the occult revival. And this is what really intrigued me. We have already noted Guido von List. On July 26th, Carl Gustav Jung had been born. On October the 12th, during the time between the idea to found Theosophy and its inauguration, Aleister Crowley was born. The man who came to call himself Baron Rudolf von Siebenendorf, later to become the leading figure in the notorious Thule Society or Thule Society, also incarnated during that fertile time on November the 9th, and the Thule Society or Thule had a great deal to do with the beginnings of Nazism. The mystical events of 1875 cannot be separated from the wider political picture of the time. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870 had seen a disastrous defeat for France that led to the unification of the German states as one nation. The balance of power in Europe began to change as the longer established powers sought to accommodate the rapidly rising industrial and military strength of Germany. Mystically minded Austrians such as Liszt felt kinship with the fatherland and became champions of a specifically Germanic heritage. Wow. I think that... So we have this incredible cast of characters assembling. We have the founding of the Theosophical Society, which had a huge impact and continues to have such a huge influence on our occult landscape even today. So we have Guido von List, and we have Siebenendorf, who was the founder of the Thule Society, underpinning Nazism. We have the birth of Crowley, and the death of Eliphas Levi, who Crowley did state that he was the immediate reincarnation of Levi. I guess we'll never know the truth or otherwise of that. And we have the birth of Carl Jung. So all this in 1875. I think that is so interesting. Anyway, I'm not going to read any more. I do thoroughly recommend this book, even though I haven't finished it yet. It's really, really good. Blessings to you all.